How well do you reckon your science lab is complying with the Code of Practice? Using 2 recent high school graduates and a hidden camera, we're going to do a target type once-over on a typical Waikato high school to give you an idea of some of the things you need to think about. First up, lab design.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi guys, welcome back.
Thanks.
You've got to store hazardous substances safely and prevent them getting into the environment. Those soft toys are actually quite appropriate for a science lab. They're teaching aids. This one represents Ebola. Not quite hazardous, but not pleasant. Unclear who brought it into the lab, but students are not allowed any food or drink. Labs have to be built so the surfaces won't absorb hazardous material if it's spilt. It's a pass for the spill mat, but our graduates should have known better. Mess up any of this and you could be liable for a $100,000 penalty. Cody Practice is the lab manager at this school. He was appointed by the Board of Trustees with all due process correctly followed. But just how well does he understand the Code of Practice? Time to run him through the target test. Mr. Cody Practice, your questions start now. As a lab manager, what are your responsibilities?
My overall responsibility is for the management of all the hazardous substances within the designated area.
Correct. How do you manage that responsibility?
I have to ensure the hazardous substances in my lab are under my direct supervision or a nominated person in charge.
Correct. When any person is in the designated area.
Okay.
What do you do to keep your hazardous substances safe when you're not there?
I keep them under lock and key.
You've read the Code of Practice, right?
Yes, of course.
And what are your obligations under it?
I'm required to ensure that the provisions of the Code of Practice are adhered to.
Correct. How do the hazardous substances control regulations relate to your lab?
Well, I have to ensure approved and unapproved hazardous substances are handled and stored in the way required by the regulations.
Correct. A good example would be flammable liquid should not be stored adjacent to oxidizers. How do you dispose of hazardous substances?
I flush them.
That might be an option, but you do need to refer to your laboratory manual. How often do you do safety checks?
Pass.
This isn't mastermind, Mr. Practice. Answer the question.
Well, I'm required to conduct regular safety checks at appropriate intervals on significant hazards.
Correct. What happens when you're not here?
I lock everything up.
Or you may nominate any other suitably qualified, appropriate person to be in charge in your absence. Congratulations, Mr. Practice. You passed the audition.
Yes!
Cody is responsible for having clear, durable signs on all entrances, advising that only authorised persons are allowed in. Most of his doors are well marked, although that one's hardly durable, even if the message is still clear. Now, this one doesn't pass muster at all, although it is easily fixed. The lab must be locked when it's not under the supervision of an authorised person, so just how secure are the doors? We couldn't open this one with the old credit card trick, that actually never works, but it is worth double checking that your locks are effective. When the lab is open for business, authorised persons may allow others to enter, and of course that includes their students, but only under their supervision. They must be physically in the lab at all times. So, let's test the system, see if we can con Cody into leaving his lab to deal with an external emergency.
Hey sir, Tom's fainted. Can you help?
Yes, just give me a minute. Eileen, can you help with this situation?
Why? What's happened? Tom's fainted. Oh no.
That's good for a green mark. Cody used his head to handle the problem and still stayed in full control of the lab. Failure, of course, can incur a penalty. Right, so you have to keep an accurate and detailed record of hazardous substances. You need to know at all times what you've got in the lab, and the record must be kept for at least a year after that substance is removed. Most labs would have it on a spreadsheet, backed up to the school intranet. But it's not a bad idea to keep a hard copy on hand as well. In fact, you need to have a copy of the list in the school emergency response plan. We're going to run a fire drill. Our graduates can't believe we've got them permission to set off the alarms. Because part of the code of practice requires you to produce within 3 minutes a full list of the hazardous substances stored in your lab. So what better way of testing the system than doing it during a fire drill? The clock is ticking. Can the front office produce that list within the 3-minute deadline? And they have to follow all the standard shutdown procedures for an evacuation as well. Piece of cake. And you do need to have this information easily available. Failure to meet the code. When anyone's using a hazardous substance, like ethanol for example, it must be clearly labelled, and any information about its hazardous nature and precautions required should also be clear. Not bad, but that beaker, while clearly identifying the liquid, is missing the hazard sticker. We picked lab manager Cody Practice for this target investigation, and have to say he came out of it pretty well. In your schools, you'll be working towards perfectly safe environments. If you can spot anything we didn't highlight, where Cody fell short of his obligations under the Code of Practice, contact us for your prize. Thanks for watching.